Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
And welcome back, everybody. I don't have to tell you how challenging it can be to be a parent. As a family, you got lots going on, lots of commitments, school. Of course, you have work. Then you have the after school activities. Then raising a teenager is never easy. If you feel like you're maybe walking on eggshells around your kids, or there's some conflicts, some challenges there, we've got help for you. And we're going to talk about that today with somebody who helps parents all the time, helps families navigate these challenges. Dr. Michelle Alden joins us here on the program. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, wonderful to have you here. And as a parent, I can relate to all of this. There's lots to talk about. Let's start with what you're hearing from many parents nowadays. What seems to be the common thread?
I think that, and I work with parents that have kids with a lot of different challenges, and so it's not your neurotypical kids usually. Sometimes it is, but usually there's ADHD, autism, just neurodiversity. So that's kind of my field, and so sometimes I think, oh, everybody is like this, or everybody's struggling with this, but I know that maybe not everybody, but one of the common threads that I see with a lot of parents across the board is just the power. Like, a lot of parents don't feel very empowered to parent today. That especially if your child has a diagnosis, they typically got that diagnosis fairly young. And then the experts start coming in and telling you what needs to happen with your child. And that can be even on the school level, where they feel like, they're seeing these behaviors and they may not be empowering you as a parent to know what to do. They just may be expecting you to fix it somehow, or that the problem is at home, but not really giving the parents the tools that they need to navigate through all of this.
Do you feel, Michelle, that many parents carry guilt? They're working a lot of jobs. Life is not like it was so much when we were kids. And sometimes that's where the eggshells come in, where they want their kids to be happy. So they try to, and it doesn't matter whether your child has ADHD or not, or anything. But that guilt that comes into play. Do you think that that's a factor here?
I do. I think that a lot of parents start out thinking, I don't want to be like my parents were, or if they were lucky enough to have, good family, they may be trying to do what their parents did. I've seen both sides of it, but by and large, most parents are I really believe, are trying to do better than what they feel like they had, or trying to fill in those gaps. But yeah, at the end of the day, I talk to parents about this a lot, that at the end of the day, feeling like you're failing, or that you didn't give enough or do enough. And it feels like with some kids too, that it's like this bucket that you can never fill. It just has these holes in it. And no matter how much the parents are doing, some kids it doesn't feel like they're really connecting, or that they're getting enough.
You said the word. I was just going to say the connection. How do you, as a parent, if you feel disconnected, how do you reconnect? Or does it essentially come down to working with somebody like yourself, being coached on how to handle that?
Yeah, connection's a hard piece in our society. Like, we're kind of seeing that everywhere. We're all a little bit disconnected, I think, in our own ways. And most parents feel like the only people that their kids are really connecting with are online through the video games and things like that. And so we work a lot on connection. I work with parents a lot on connecting language, how to make a request for your kids, how to handle their lack of motivation or their demand avoidance, and by how we word it, and using connecting language. I have like charts of connecting language in the book that I wrote, parenting emotionally distressed kids. And so that I tell parents, make copies of it, put it up everywhere. So as you start to change your social language and how you're cueing, it starts to build better, it sets it up for better connections.
Totally get it. And I remember 2 years ago, yeah, like a typical parent, your kid comes home from school. You want to engage. Most parents say, "Well, how was your day?" Well, what do you think you're going to get back from that? Fine. And those kind of questions where it's just a one word answer. I was that parent. Somebody whispered in my ear to switch it around. And I said to my daughter, "What's it like? What does it feel like to have the most beautiful hair of any girl on the planet?" Right away. Oh, well, I used a different conditioner today and I did this and I did that. And but I won't take credit for that. Somebody suggested that, but it's changing that language. And you would be that somebody uh, to whisper in our ear how we can refocus it. What a difference it makes. But as a parent, we're in the trenches, if you will. It's hard to figure that stuff out when you're at that point, right?
Oh, yeah. And I found that, even with everything I knew and was telling other parents, there were times I wish I had me in my corner whispering and telling me, what to say or what to do. And some of that is also just giving parents permission to take a step back, and just, we don't have to have an answer to every why question right now, or pausing, or just moving in closer, but not having to say anything. Just the power of our presence is undervalued, I think.
Hmm. Well, you are the parent. We can't forget that. Maybe sometimes you do. And then you have some parents that try to be the best friend of their child. And invariably it's not going to go well. You're not, you have to strike that balance of parent of friend. Have you dealt with that working with parents?
Somewhat. And I think that sometimes parents feel a loss, of like they maybe feel like they were connected more when the kids were little. And then as children move into the teen years, I think there's a loss sometimes in the relationship, and parents feel it. And then they're trying to recreate more of that connection through coming alongside as a friend more. And I encourage parents to be more of a guide and a coach, because I also work with a lot of kids that have a lot of anxiety, and a lot of parents that have a lot of anxiety. And one way that we help ease the anxiety is somebody needs to be in charge. And the kids need you as a parent to be in charge. And it doesn't have to be demanding, authoritative, I'm in charge and you better listen to me. But it's having a plan and knowing what we're going to do today, and having some boundaries that
Yeah,
they
wait,
may
are you
hit
reading my
against.
mind? How are you doing that? Because I'm thinking of the word boundaries, just like the word connection before, and you said boundaries. And yes, like we as parents, we forget that our kids need them, whether they like it or not. They need that structure. How did this begin for you, Michelle? Your journey to helping parents?
Yeah, so I think that my journey really started as a child. I was adopted when I was 6.5 years old, and into a great family. But I think just knowing like some of the attachment things from that end of things, and how difficult that was for me growing up, and even into adulthood, just kind of um, I loved being a parent because I had this opportunity to kind of do all the things that I wished I would have had as far as connection and stuff. But I started reading parenting books when I was about 12 years old. My mom had a bunch of parenting books. I was fascinated with like how families are supposed to work and parenting. And I knew that I wanted to work with challenging kids from a pretty young age. Um, and then as I started working with kids, I saw more and more that I really wanted to work in the home with parents and help them to know what to do. That it was great that I could have this rapport with the kids as a counselor or as a youth leader, but I wanted the parents to experience that too. And I I found that with my kids using some of the same things I tell parents to do. That it was, I had a kid ask me, I was at a workshop and they said, well, did it work? And I was like, what do you mean? Like, they said, well, did it work with your kids? You know, and I really feel like it did. You know, we have some of our issues and problems and things that we're still working through, as we all are as people. But I enjoyed being a parent, and I don't feel like I lost the joy of family, even in the hard things that we went through. I want other people to experience that.
When you were 12 and you found that the stack of books, you cracked the code, were you looking at it as a child, a tween, if you will, uh, getting insight on how mom operates, or you were just fascinated about how the mind works?
So I was in my family, I was the oldest and I was adopted, and then my parents had two more children, their biological children. And so I think some of it came from like um, watching how they were parented, and especially in their early years when I didn't have that, you know. So I have pretty, not a ton of memories, but pretty good memories from before adoption and after, and just seeing like in my mind, I think there was some of that, like, I think this could be better. I think they could do better. um, but I wasn't in a position where I was, and maybe some of it was just the time period. Like I didn't know any other kids that were telling their parents what to do the way that I see now. um, but I was just kind of absorbing it and thinking about like, well, when I have kids, I want to do it like this. And I think that was one of the biggest keys, was instead of just saying, I don't want to do what my mom did, or I was like really able to apply those things that I was learning. And that's kind of part of what I do now, is like, I work with a lot of parents that are very well resourced and read parenting books and go to workshops, and especially in the adoption field, there's a lot of resources, but it's helping them apply that knowledge in the situations when they're happening. And that's the most challenging, right, for our kids and for us.
Hmm. What about discipline? What's your suggestion there? And it's a very talk about walking on eggshells. How do you deal with that?
Yeah. Now, how much time do we have?
Maybe that's another podcast. I don't know. Hmm.
Yeah. I can kind of give you a little bit of an overview. I'm really there's the pendulum that kind of swings sometimes from very authoritative to very permissive. And I I my goal was to try to stay more in the middle of that, where we have structure and we have definitely people that are in charge of the family and know what's going on, but then at the same time, um, wanting the kids to be part of that and yet not be totally permissive. And so I feel like the best way that I can explain what needs to happen in discipline is it really has to be cause and effect, a lot more. So um, it's kind of like love and logic, except that most of the kids I work with, their logic skills are not really readily available. um, but it is more based on like, if this happens, then this is what's going to happen, and it tying into what's happening. For example, if a child makes a mess, rather than saying, well, your room is messy, so now you're going to get your phone taken away, and there's not the same connection there. It's more of like, we're gonna stay here and work on this until it's cleaned up, and then we're gonna go do such and such. And a lot of parents will struggle with that at first, like, well, where's the punishment or where's the discipline? It's like, in getting from where we are to where we want to be, that's the process in which we're learning, rather than looking at like, we got to where we wanted to be and now we're going to punish you for being where you were.
Hmm. It seems like it's really about understanding. There's a reason why your kid is not cleaning up their room. There's got to be a reason other than just defiance. Maybe they're depressed. Maybe it's overwhelming. I got to do homework, then I got to do this and I got to do that. So instead of, give me your phone. And my daughter said this to me a long time ago. She's like, what's that going to do? And I'm like, oh, I thought to myself, not in front of her. It's like, well, she's kind of right. All right. So, you know what it's going to do? It's going to isolate her from her friends. And that's counterproductive because that is their lifeline to others, because of the way things are today with social media and such, the isolation that comes along with that. It's just the understanding. But I'm not the expert by far. I need people like you, as the guidance, as the pilot, as the lighthouse for a lot of this. Um, when you're dealing with families that have a child that has ADHD, or some of the other challenges that many of them face, uh, how does that change everything here?
I think that it gives us information. To me, when a parent tells me that their child's been diagnosed with ADHD or oppositional defiance or conduct disorders, to me, it gives me a lot of information about how their brain is working or not working. And so it shows me kind of where the gaps are happening. And it has a lot to do with their executive functioning, which is kind of how we approach kids a lot of times, is kind of like from the front with a lot of talk. Like even therapy is mostly talk therapy. And with a kid that's got neurodiversity going on, they're differently wired. And so it's not as helpful as kind of the show me and help me to do it. I look at it like almost hand over hand when you're teaching someone how to write or do a skill and you take their hand and help them do it. That's what I help do with parents in those moments, and that's why on the discipline, I'm so keyed into cause and effect, because that's an executive function skill that we all need to be able to weigh out the pros and cons and not just do the first impulsive thing that comes into our minds. And so we teach that by, first we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this. And if this happens, then this is going to happen. And a lot of times I have to help the parents with that too, because some of those diagnoses kind of run through family lines. And so parents will tell me, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to have that kind of structure. And so they need just that help. And sometimes they just need their permission to do it. Like, it's going to be okay. Your child's going to be okay if we have this time period where we're just working on these things.
That is a great point. More and more adults are being diagnosed. If we just look at ADHD nowadays than ever before, and they never realized that they were dealing with it when they were younger. It's just coming to light. There's more awareness about it. Michelle, tell me about you have a 12-step program for transformation within a family and a child. Tell me about that. How does that work?
Yeah, so it's actually 12 weeks. And
what did I say? I meant 12
parent,
weeks.
Yeah, you said 12 steps.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. So it's 12 weeks, and it's done through parent coaching, but it's an opportunity to have one-on-one coaching. So just like you and I are doing. And there is a way too that if parents are dealing with really aggressive or out of control behaviors and they feel like, no, you have to come and see this, they can have me come for 2 days of intensive intervention, and then we'll do the 12-week program. But I found that with the 12-week program, like each week they have different things that the parents have different skills that they're working on and they're applying in their home, but then they have access to the coaching in between things of like, oh, I tried that and it went like this, or it didn't work, or most of the time they tell me like, I tried this little thing and it worked, so I like that a lot. They get videos every week kind of outlining what we're working on, and then encouragement videos as well of like, hey, don't give up. I know you're tired, but it's really was meant to be pretty intensive. So it's, instead of sending your child away for residential treatment, or if they're coming home from some kind of residential treatment, this gives you the structure to help them to use the skills that they need to learn to do that in the home.
Do you also work with the child?
Not as much when it's online, the 12-week program. I have had some parents that will have the child like come on the Zoom calls just so I can meet them. But when I'm telling the parents what I want them to do and explaining the why behind it. Most often I don't want the kids there hearing it because it just gives them more fuel for like where they can, and also if the parents are not feeling confident, I want them to express that to me and not with the child, because with the child, I want them to have the confidence. Like, even if they don't understand all the reasons why we're doing it, they're confidently moving forward. So my job is to kind of give them that confidence and hope to do the things.
Do I have this right? During the process, the 12 weeks, you're accessible at any time, essentially, if somebody has a question or yeah, maybe an intervention, a challenge.
Yeah, I use text a lot, even with local families. When I work locally, I'm working usually in the homes. Um, and I do that because it really is helpful as things are happening. And I found that most of the time I can text a few things of what they can say. Sometimes it is just the
Mm.
connecting language. Like, I'll tell them exactly what to say, and it's perfect. Like, they'll be like, I said it and it worked, and I'm like, yay. So we can move through things pretty quickly. I don't, it's interesting because it's available, but most people don't use that aspect really that much. I think, they have the skills they're learning, and so they can try it, but it is really helpful in those really intense moments. So
It's nice to know you have a safety net. You
yeah.
know, it's almost like having a friend where, call your lifeline if you get into a jam, if you will. Final question on that. 12 weeks. Now, a lot of these programs center around the number 12. Is there a scientific reason, to form habits? Why the 12?
I so the first 30 days are really important. Getting 30 days in a row of the behaviors that we want, that helps to build the habits. So you're teaching parents new habits, the kids are learning new habits. It takes that amount of time because usually the first 30 days we're not quite on the path yet. The kids are going to have their resistance. Sometimes the parents have their resistance. So I really found the first 30 days are really critical in implementing it, and then that extended amount of time. And by the end of the program, the goal is really that the parents know what they're going to do moving forward. So they have these tools. If the child does something outside of what they've been doing, or something abnormal, or a new situation comes up because of a developmental milestone or something, the parents can still rely on those tools. And I think that amount of time really helps to solidify it. The research shows that, like, even when kids are sent away to residential treatment and learn those skills, that it is the first 3 months that are the most critical in that process. And that as they're there, sometimes they're there a lot longer because they're still having behaviors or things like that, or the program itself is like a school year or something. But they found that the most effective treatment has been like 6 months, and then they go home. But what happens when they go home is really important too, as far as them maintaining any gains.
What you said in terms of the first 30 days, that crystallized it right there. On a daily basis to make that change in the parent, and then the parent makes that change over time within their children. Fascinating talking with you. This, yeah, and I had no idea that part of your specialty is children or families going through challenges like ADHD and others. Had no idea. So I'm glad we got together today. How do we find you, Michelle?
So I have a YouTube channel called Parenting Challenging Kids. That's one way that people can get lots of, I call it not free material, but public service material. And then I also have a book, Parenting Emotionally Distressed Kids, and people can get that on Amazon or wherever they get books. And then my website, parentingchallengingkids.com, has all of this information. You can sign up for a free consultation on there, and that's probably the best way to learn more and see what I can do to help.
Love it. If there's any family out there saying that, oh, everything's perfect, we never have any challenges, we all get along, everything, you're not being honest. We all have it going on. And thankfully, we have you as a resource. Michelle, thank you for being here today. Looking forward next time we get together, and really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate that.
Coming right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.